Welcome to Below the Line, where we talk about working in Hollywood from the crew perspective. My name is Skid. I was an assistant director in Hollywood for the better part of 8 years. Now I'm not. Today, we're talking about La La Land, the 2016 musical written and directed by Damien Chazelle and starring Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling. At Rotten Tomatoes, its tomato meter score is 91%, and the critics' consensus reads, La La Land breathes new life into a bygone genre with thrillingly assured direction, powerful performances, and an irresistible excess of heart. This movie won a ton of awards, and you've probably heard of it. But as always here on Below the Line, we're not focused on what the critics thought. My guests today were crew from the film. First, Paula Case, you were the key second AD. Paula.
Hello, yes, I was.
Paula, you've been a long-time key second, and we, in fact, first met on 2001's The Majestic, where you hired me for my first post-trainee DGA gig. You got a ton of recognizable films on your resume as a second, but it looks like you've recently moved into firsting. Tell me more about what you're doing now.
Yes, I have been firsting for the last couple of years, and primarily in features, but I've delved into a little TV lately, and looking forward to staying in the firsting world.
Paula, glad you're here. Next, we're joined by Steve Morrow, the sound mixer from La La Land. Steve, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So, Steve, you've been a sound mixer going on 25 years, and you've been twice nominated for Academy Awards, once for La La Land, and more recently for A Star is Born. What I think is particularly interesting about your IMDb page, however, is that you were the sound mixer on 9 feature-length films that were released in 2018.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean,
it was quite the busy year. Actually, what turns out a lot of the time, you do a movie and then the studio will hold on to it for 6 months or a year, and then some movies, like a Clint Eastwood movie, he'll shoot it and 4 months later it'll come out. So it was one of those years where I think 9 of the projects came out because they were kind of stacked up. Whereas this year, maybe 2 or 3 movies will come out and that'll be it.
God, that was my question. Whether you had another 9 or 10 films coming out this year that we should watch for as well. But no, so it's so they get stacked up. Well, thanks for taking time today, Steve. We're glad to have you on the show.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
And finally, we're joined today by Robert Folks, the supervising location manager. Robert, you're also known as ROFO. Is that correct?
That's correct, Robert.
Because, I'm using Skid. So if you want to use Robert, you can be Robert on the podcast today.
You would be Roskid. Roskid. It's the first 2 letters. And okay, anyway, we'll get to that later.
You'll be Robert or Rofo. You can answer to both of those. I'm answering exclusively to Skid, so we're all on the same.
Oh, that's true. You have a nickname too anyway. So okay.
That's right. Yes.
I won't do Roskid.
No, that will just confuse folks. So, Rofo, you started doing location work in the early 90s with a mix of film and television credits over the last 30 years. Any preference?
Between film and TV? Definitely film. There, how's that for a short answer?
I'll second that.
Okay, so let's turn our attention to La La Land. First, Paula, tell us a little bit about the shooting. How many days of filming did you have?
It was a 40-day schedule.
And were you guys shooting 5-day weeks or 6-day weeks?
We were shooting 5-day weeks in LA, obviously. But then when we were shooting some of the more sensitive scenes, like on the freeway and all, we shifted our work week so that we would work Wednesday through Sunday. But it was still just 5-day weeks.
Now, we're going to talk some more about the specific scenes in the film. But in general, it's obviously a location-heavy movie. Robert, how many locations did you guys have to get this done?
I believe it was 47. I think I remember telling people, wow, we did 47 locations in 40. I think it ultimately became 42 days, if I'm correct.
Might have come to that, yeah.
Yeah, I think that was what I used to tell people. How many? 47 out of 47 locations in 42 days, I believe it was. And I look at it from the standpoint of a separate location where you're actually at a separate place, paying a separate fee. Sometimes, production designers, their department, they divide one location into a different location, but that's 47 separate places that had a location fee, move the trucks, new place. It becomes an average of you're on the move every day. There were some places you're there for half a day, and maybe that becomes a 2-day, 1-day location, 2 locations in 1 day, but then other days, I don't think we were ever anywhere more than 3 days at one place, I believe.
That sounds probably about right. I can't imagine what it would be.
Maybe was Hollywood Center Studios, maybe, but I can't remember. Yeah. I think that was 2 or 3 days. But yeah, it's always on the move, pretty much.
How much stage work was there for the film overall?
None, except for being at Hollywood Center Studios, where we did the finale fantasy sequence and then a couple other shots outside the stages. But and we were at Warner Brothers. I mean, technically that's on the lot too, but no, it was all location.
I was just going to say that stage work that he's referring to was really a set. I mean, it wasn't like we were using the sound stage for something else. We were using it for a sound stage so that it would look like that. And so there weren't any other days where we were on a sound stage where we created another set or anything.
From my standpoint, it was nice being on a stage as a break. As a break in the movie, you still have to figure out where to park. And Hollywood Center's parking is horrible, so we were still out on the streets and all of that. But it was nice being on a contained stage. I'm sure it was for you guys too, for a 2 days out of 42, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Let me turn the question to you, Steve. This being a musical, what sort of is different about this sort of film schedule than doing any of the other films you've done?
Well, I think schedule-wise, it's musicals versus a traditional film. It's fairly similar schedule-wise. There's no effect other than you just have to be prepared, for the music moments in advance. So from time to time we would have a pre-call to set up speakers or playback, knowing if they wanted to do playback rehearsal right at call time. But beyond that, I mean, the process is the same, just making sure you have enough time and you're set up before they're ready to shoot. And it being all on location, it puts a small amount of extra difficult, setup. So like the roommate song, in that apartment, that's a real set. That's on a rooftop of a building in Koreatown, I believe. And so, you have to hide speakers in every room. Whereas if you were on a soundstage, that's an easy thing to do. Whereas for us, we were opening windows and running cables through, and it was a bigger setup. But as long as you knew that was the process of that location, which is great to be on the scouts, then you can kind of see how much time you need and let Paula and her team know how much time the setup is going to be. So that if they want to do it right at call time, you say, okay, give me 45 minutes before that, and I'll have it all set up and ready to go.
So the musical numbers themselves, are they recording them before filming, and then are you doing a playback, or are you actually capturing on location?
Well, it was a combination of both. I think for this film, they recorded everything in advance because you always want to have it no matter what. If an actor shows up and she has laryngitis that day, you still need to be able to film. But there were definitely songs that we knew in advance were going to be live, and songs that we knew in advance were going to be played back no matter what. So the opening scene of the movie on the freeway, all those dancers on camera are not the same singers that sang the song. They danced and they lip sync, and we always knew that was going to be a playback moment. But Emma Stone, in her audition scene where she's auditioning and gets the big break, we always knew that was going to be live. And so I don't believe they had a pre-record for that, because on the day, the composer, Justin Horowitz, he was off camera on a keyboard playing the music along with her singing. So she drove the speed of the song with her performance, and he kept up behind her, so that it wasn't a playback song that she had to keep up to. It was more that the composer had to keep up with her so that she could really play the emotion as the actress versus, just lip syncing a scene like that.
Incredible scene too.
Yeah.
I always regret, after I watched the movie, I regretted not standing there that day and watching it, because I'm running around doing something else. We kind of did that on a little bit of a stage next to the offices there. And I remember walking and hearing it in the distance of the stage going, I wish I was standing there watching that scene be filmed, because it's so powerful. And actually, I have a question for Steve. Sound is one of the things that I'm kind of not as involved in as the movie goes on, except apologizing sometimes for picking a location that's really hard for me to mix. Sorry, they really love this place. That's why we're here. It's not
sorry, we would love a challenge.
Love a challenge. But are you having to really sit and make sure that that sounded really good in terms of you being there live? That took a little more time to just make sure you were capturing that the best way compared to something that's already pre-recorded. That's amazing.
Well, yeah, so we showed up on that day knowing, okay, this is the big day. This is Emma's big song. It's been on the schedule for a long time, because I think it was towards the end of the film. And so we knew it. And then when we did the first rehearsal, we kind of watched, and if you watch the scene and you understand, the filmmaking process, the table that the agents or auditioners were sitting at, the camera goes right through it. And the way that they did that is they split the table in half mid-song. Well, that wasn't a quiet thing. It made like a clunking noise. It slid apart. The camera went through, went around, and then by the end of it, they had to put it back together so that when the lights came back up, they were sitting there as normal. So we came in thinking, oh, this is going to be great. She's standing in one spot. She's going to sing. We're going to record it. And then all of a sudden, we do the first rehearsal, and we hear the furniture clunking apart and slamming back together. And I went, oh no, this is going to be a live moment. How are we going to do this? So what we ended up doing in that was recording it the best we could and making notes on where those clunking noises were. Then we did a couple takes where it was just the camera just on Emma's face singing the entire song again, which would cover those moments of the noise, and they could slip that sound into to fix the banging noises. So
wow.
That was it was all still the live performance, but in those moments when it just had this, mistake in it, or not really mistake, but it had to be for the camera to move through the set. We were able to put that in with the recordings of her standing still. But yeah, I mean, it is more pressure on those days when because also when you're singing those songs, you only have, 5 or 6 takes. And then at that point, your voice is destroyed. And so you have to make sure you get it right. But for the most part, you try to take as much care in that as any other scene. Your goal is always just to record the voices the best you can. With the least amount of background noise. So, but in the singing moments, it's almost easier in the sense of recording because they're loud, but it's also more pressure because you can't say, hey, can I have another take for sound? You have to just get it no matter what.
My fear is that Rofo's takeaway is that why doesn't the sound guys always just record it twice if there's an airplane or something and then loop it back in underneath since those are the complaints you get.
That's true. I swear, I picked the one next to the airport. It wasn't me. I warned them.
And why did you show them the one next to the airport? That's always the question.
It was cheaper. It's always cheaper the closer to the airport you get.
Surprise.
Thank you.
Paul, in capturing the musical aspects, to follow up on what Steve was talking about, any specific challenges from an AD perspective and sort of coordinating either crew or location?
Well, I think that there's a combination of people involved depending on the complexity of the musical number. And of course that there was a huge dance team that was involved and they had a bunch of rehearsals. And then of course, Steve and the sound team. And then there was the whole music department that was involved that, Justin and his people and all. And so it's just more people to coordinate than just a regular dialogue scene, say, between a couple actors. But Damien was so organized and had such a vision for what he wanted that so much of this was able to have been done in prep in terms of knowing what we were doing. There was very little that was on the fly, as I recall. I mean, it was all very well planned out because of his vision for what he wanted. And it had to be in order to keep that schedule, in order to have the dancers we needed and the songs we needed and all that.
Tell me more about working with Damien. I'm a fan of I'd probably say all of his films to date.
I can tell you in prep, he fascinated me because we would sit in meetings and, he's a young guy. He's not an old man. And we would sit in meetings in prep. And I know, Robert, you were probably in a lot of these meetings. Steve, maybe you weren't in them quite yet. But when he was talking about his vision for these various scenes, and he would reference movies, one right after the other, and this I want it to look like this, and this I want it to look like this. And I just thought to myself, how does a kid so young, I shouldn't say kid, a man so young, have the time to have seen all these movies and then to be able to remember? I mean, obviously he's an incredibly intelligent man, and be able to remember the bits and pieces that he wanted and that he liked. And I just remember writing down, oh no, I need to watch that. Oh no, I need to watch that. How am I ever going to watch all these movies? But did you sit in on any of those meetings, Robert? Were you there for that?
Yeah, definitely. And how he would have the screenings before.
Oh, right. I forgot about that.
Well, he was going to do more, I think, but he ended up screening maybe 3 or 4 movies of that inspired him and inspired and invited people to come see them. And I sat at home and watched a lot of them anyway. the Jacques Demy movies were the ones that I'd always wanted to see, and he was referencing. So that was a great excuse to finally watch all those movies. Yeah, no, he was totally inspiring. I mean, I love that he was so focused on what he wanted, why he liked something or why he didn't. It was, I loved working with him.
I think what not surprised me, but what was interesting to me is that when we went on set, it was pretty much he already knew what he wanted, and it was up to us to put it down. So like the movie was made in his head already, and it was up to the crew to kind of put it on film. And I think that's always inspirational to work with somebody who doesn't just show up and goes, okay, what are we shooting today? Let's figure this out. And that works for some movies because some movies need that. But when you have such a movie that has such a vision and a precise vision, it's fun to work with those type of people that really get it and really just want you to put their vision on film. And so if that movie failed miserably, it's because of him. The movie succeeded splendidly, it's because of him. You know what I mean? So like it's a full ownership where you can't say later on, well, the script was crap or the editing was bad or whatever it was. Like that's 100% his vision. And I don't think there was any shot that he went, oh, that didn't work, let's figure something else out. I think it was always made in his head exactly how you saw it in the theater.
Totally agree with that.
Yeah, a matter too of being able to convey what he wanted to all of us so that we could give him what he wanted, which of course is another trick sometimes. And but he obviously was able to do that as well.
Well, working with writer-directors is a treat for me too, because I love if they want to make a change, they're the person standing there saying, oh, that sounds great, I'd rather say this. There were a few of those on La La Land. Definitely the one that comes to mind is the Casablanca window at Warner Brothers, where he looked up and learned that was actually the window from Casablanca on French Street. And I believe that the line made it into the movie where they mentioned that in the movie when they're walking outside of her cafe or they're walking somewhere on the Warner Brothers scenes. But that's just great. You see the look in his eyes and you know it's going to change. He's the writer. He thinks that's cool. He appreciates that came up, and it's all right there in one package. And I love working with writer directors like Martin McDonagh and people like that, where it's just you suggest something and there it is. They're the ones that are going to nod their head or shake their head.
Harkening back to the discussion earlier about the TV and film, and that's a huge difference between TV and film, is and especially when you have a writer director, you have one person that you're answering to, and that's the creative vision for the whole project. And in TV, there's often several writers, producers, and a director on the set, and it's more of a team effort in trying to get answers. But especially, like you said, Robert, when you have a writer director on a feature, they're the king, and that's the person who answers all the questions, and it's their vision, and they decide. So that's a nice thing to do, to be part of.
Yeah.
Well, were there any of Damien's visions that you found particularly challenging to pull off on La La Land?
Well, I mean, everybody always assumes the freeway was the craziest logistic thing, and it was. Lots of meetings and different jurisdictions and entities that you have to meet with to get the final approval to be there up on that freeway ramp as many days as we wanted to. But for me, the biggest challenge is always a neighborhood, and when you have to do a neighborhood at night, blasting somewhere in the crowd all night long for 2 nights and keep a lot of Encino residents happy and figure out who you should pay a little money to for their inconvenience and which ones you don't feel like paying any money to because you're sick of paying everybody. That becomes what I look back on as the biggest challenge. I mean, people don't watch the scene and think, oh, wow, how'd you film a scene in the backyard of a house? But they don't know what you're going through when you're filming that scene in the backyard of the house.
I mean, especially, you're cognizant you're in a neighborhood and that you're going to be blasting this music. And so, there's always you feel terrible because you're blasting music in a neighborhood and you're making Robert's life a nightmare. But you also know, well, this is a musical. And so hopefully Robert let the neighbors know. But it doesn't matter how much you can tell people. And all of a sudden at 4 a.m, you're playing the same song over and over. And that's that. But I think on the sound level, the hardest scene for us was actually Ryan at the end of the pier, doing his piece, because it was for us, we were always told, I don't know what songs will be live and I don't know what's going to be playback until the day we get there. And we just have to be prepared for both. And so if you watch that scene, there's not a lot of lighting in the grand scheme of it. There's, all the light posts and the sunset. And for us, we have to do playback with, the proper technical challenges on that. Whereas, on a normal film, if it was just dialogue, I could have a small rig that I wear around me and kind of just follow the camera around since it's a 360. On a musical, you have to have the right time code, the right click tracks. You have to be able to record the actor, feed them an earpiece, feed a speaker. And these are all things that you can't just do wirelessly from the shore because that's a 400 feet down the pier. So we had to run, I think, 1,600 feet of cable, with like 40 minutes to spare, because in the morning we were in the jazz club and in the evening when the sun was going down, we were on the pier. And so we had to run all that cabling down for the electronics to be hidden behind trash cans or, under a park bench or, the benches on the pier. And so those, as you look at that scene, it's one of the simpler looking scenes, but for us, it was just like we were running up and down that pier because there was no time to set up and there was no, it was just like you have to get it when the sun sets.
Sorry, Steve. We were going to shoot that. We were going to shoot that on the sidewalks outside of the club. And when the idea suddenly hit on, wait, we got to get a great water element in this movie. We don't have one yet. Let's stage this on the pier. And everybody looked at each other and said, of course we're staging this on the pier. It's on the same day as we filmed The Lighthouse. It's perfect. And it ended up being in the trailer, and it was great. And I apologize for your 1,600 feet of cable.
Oh, no. I mean, it totally it totally makes the movie. I mean, if that was on the sidewalk, it would have been not as great. But it's great. It's fine. He the Jacques Demy thing, that was going to be kind of a Jacques Demy kind of sequence, walking along the storefronts of Huntington Beach up, and you kind of would have seen the pier in the distance, and we were going to kind of be up in those storefronts and kind of dress them all kind of the same way we did the Warner Brothers backlot, all kind of Jacques Demy colors and things, and you'd see the pier in the background, and he was going to sing that song dancing up the sidewalk, looking in the storefront windows, and I just loved it when let's just do this on the pier. It was great. It was great. And then adding the street lights, and it looked amazing. And it sounded amazing. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It was well worth it.
It was well worth. No, those are those little treats when because of a scheduling thing, you're suddenly like, oh, well, we kind of have to do this the same day, but this is the best location we would want to pick for this anyway. So that's a treat.
Paula, how about you? Favorite or least favorite scenes?
Well, the one thing I remember about, especially like in prep when we were deciding on the schedule and the locations and scouting and everything, Linus, the DP, every time we'd go somewhere new, he'd go, this is great. We have to shoot this during magic hour though. And we'd get to the next location. You go, oh, this is great, but it has to be during magic hour. And Peter and I, the first day, after about the 10th time he said this, would say, there's only so many magic hours in the schedule. How are we possibly going to shoot all these scenes during magic hour? So that was one of the big challenges, I think, there were a lot of magic hour scenes that we had to schedule around, and oftentimes dance numbers and choreograph things and all. And so there was like the pier, there was the dance at Griffith Park, there was the roommates out in front in Long Beach. I mean, those are just a few that I can think of, but that was a huge challenge for us in planning and scheduling. And then on the day, of course, trying to make everything come together so that at the right moment of the perfect light, you get the perfect take. So that was a big challenge for this movie.
Did you guys have any weather challenges? Because I imagine you don't have a lot of stage work to retreat to. If you catch rain, you're done for the day.
The biggest weather challenge, we shot this in like August, September, October, it was scorching hot for like that freeway scene was over 100 degrees that weekend, wasn't it? It was just miserably hot. Yeah. And we were, however high up in the air on concrete all day long, with of course dancing in the cars and everything else.
Yeah, I remember the dancers, we had to put the Fernie pads on top of the hoods of the cars because a car hood in 100-degree weather is 140 degrees, 150 degrees, and they're dancing on it and laying on it. And so in between takes, they had to kind of cover them up so that they wouldn't just be boiling.
And choosing that location because you wanted to see downtown in the distance, you want to make sure that you get up there on that weekend and see downtown in the distance. So that's a weather challenge. It's not rain, but the things like that, you want to, a marine layer fogging in Ryan on the Hermosa Pier would have sucked too.
How many days were you guys up on the for the freeway scene? Was it you
two?
It was 2 full days.
Two shoot days, 1 full rehearsal day.
With the previous Sunday before, we went and rehearsed all day, and then the day of the shoot, was the weekend. It was the Saturday, Sunday.
And did you have it closed off overnight, or did you have to clear and then close it down again for the next day when you did the weekend shooting?
It was consecutive. It was load in it in the middle of the night, shoot, get out by the following, so it could open again on Monday morning. So it was a full consecutive weekend. Damien wanted to rehearse 2 weekend days, but we can only get 1 out of them. And I had to close it during the tech scout, which we had to tech scout it at night, which was weird. So it was like 3.25 days closing it down.
I'm sure, boy, LA loves it when you do that, right? That's like, oh, we're all in this filmmaking together.
Tech scouting the key dance number at night that takes place in the daytime was weird.
And it's a high occupancy HOV lane, high occupancy vehicle lane.
Yeah.
It's not a main thoroughfare to downtown or anything. It's just a right, Robert. It's just
exactly. It was still jumping through hoops to get it closed for that length of time. But I tell people that no, it was not me closing down the Hollywood freeway for 3 days. Which is where the scene was written. It was written as if they were seeing the Capitol Records building in the background. But we're not going to get the 101 freeway for 3.25 days shut down.
And so that's an interesting. It goes to what you were mentioning earlier about Damien's vision and being able to modify that. Is that something that does get modified when you're sitting around the room having a conversation about? Obviously, we're not going to shut down the 101 for 3 days, or does he come to that conclusion on his own?
Well, it's pretty early on in the process. I had shot that same ramp on a movie called Cake with Jennifer Aniston. Completely different type scene.
I was there for that.
No, you were there for that too? Wait, you were there for that? Oh my God. This shows how much I interact with the sound department on a movie. Just like pass by. Hi, how you doing?
The good sound departments you never talk to, right?
Well, that's true. It's true. You're not coming up and complaining about the locations because I picked the right locations and we just both do our job. That's
nailed it.
Oh my God, I knew you from Cake also. That's so funny. But yeah, so that was a completely different emotional type scene, and we were only up there for a shorter amount of time, obviously. But yeah, that was one of the freeways that came to mind. Another one that we contemplated, but I guess we scouted it, was the 710, which gets shot a lot. There were 710 dead ends at Valley Boulevard. Shows like movies like Taken have done car crashes there and things like that. But it's just, and you can get up on an overpass and look down, which is kind of neat. You could do shots like that, but it just doesn't have the scope of what that opening scene was. So it was chosen fairly early on. And I think Peter Cohn he had done a car commercial up there too. So he knew right away that he said he was getting ready to recommend it in the meeting. I was like, I did Cake there. That's it. You want it. I want it. That's where we're shooting it.
One of the other scenes I think looks particularly challenging, and this maybe with my background as an AD, is the party and the pool, where folks at the end actually go into the pool and there's a huge party around them. Looks like a ton of not just regular background, but dance specific background. And I'm curious to hear some of the stories about getting that one done.
That was the impossible location to find. Yes. The night party at the pool, right? Because
yes.
I have a good story about the other pool too, but the night party where the guy jumps in, that we scouted that, like that was one of those where it was like, okay, we're going to do a scout after rep on Thursday. And then how about Monday morning before call, we're going to do another scout and find another house. And I can't remember what was the challenge.
They loved a house that was in Beverly Hills.
Oh, that's
and right. I said, if we're going to pull off 2 all nights of somewhere in the crowd playing till dawn, I need to go meet these neighbors immediately to see if we can even pull off this house. And when the first 2 neighbors on either side said, no way, and you need 90% signatures of the entire neighborhood to say yes, I said, we got to find a different house. We're going to end up loving this. We're going to get too far down the line and we're not going to be able to shoot these scenes here. And And it was, I mean, that was one where Damien had a specific look that he wanted. He wanted a city view. And ironically, that other house didn't have a city view, but he loved the house so much. One of the challenges was a lot of houses that we'd look at, you kind of want to make it work, but you realize that it's an infinity pool, and an infinity pool is not going to work because ultimately he liked the idea of the dancers being all the way around the pool, and a lot of houses up in the hills that are modern and great for all the other reasons why you like the house have infinity pools. So we would kind of look at them, but then I knew we weren't going to choose it ultimately. And then ultimately this house worked out great. I mean, we had all these scenes out front too that didn't quite make it into the movie as well, little couple shots, but I guess the icing on the cake for that house too was you could get all the way around it, and it had that guest house next to it, which worked out really great with the guy jumping in and the crane work and all that. So the house ended up working out as good as any other house, but that was a challenge. We looked at a lot of houses for that.
If I'm not mistaken, on some of those houses we looked at, didn't a bus get stuck going up a hill?
Oh my God!
And we all had to Uber home.
Uber home, yeah.
Horrible.
Scout
That
bus.
was my worst scouting story, actually, in the history of ROFO.
That wasn't even your fault. It was just the bus driver thought, I got this, and then jammed it, and then that was
I
it.
had to make a U-turn and got stuck.
It is the bus driver mapping out the route, but that's the classic case of please let me go pre-scout these locations before we take 50 people up there. But I think we were so anxious to finally find this thing. No one had gone up there yet. We just loved it from the photos, and wind your way up there. Thanks for that memory. Thanks a lot.
Is that a house you actually ended up filming at? That sounds like a challenge for getting good. That was the indication enough that this isn't going to work on a lot of levels.
No. Fortunately, did we even go up to the house?
I think Damien went up ahead of the bus and then came down and was like, "Nah, it's not going to work. Everybody go home." And then that was the Uber trip home.
And we all Ubered home, yeah.
Yeah, and the bus. I think the bus is still stuck there, but they have people living in it now. It's an Airbnb.
It allows filming too, ironically. It's in the middle of the street and all the neighbors are on board, and it's perfect. When they do speed 3, they can do a bus.
Right
if this bus moves, everybody dies.
That's great.
And then everyone got out and watched for a while. And then
I have video of transpo guys jamming chairs underneath wheels to try to get the bus to move and things of that nature.
Oh, that's great.
Paul, you reminded me that there are actually 2 scenes with pools. That's right, because that's the evening scene, and there's also a day party scene where Ryan Gosling is playing with I guess the 80s cover band, and Emma's there as well.
Yeah, the 80s band. That was another scorching hot day in Encino, I think, 100 plus, which was great for a pool scene, so we wanted to be sure that the pool was comfortable for people to be dancing in and out of all day and sitting in. And even though it was a hot day, we wanted to be sure it wasn't, freezing cold. So we had someone from Robert's department have them turn the heater on the pool the night before so that it would warm up in time. But unfortunately, the thermostat was broken on the pool heater. And when we got there in the morning, the whole pool was over 100 degrees. The water temperature was over 100 degrees. And then it was like about 110 degrees outside. And the poor extras they put their feet in the pool. They couldn't even put their feet in the pool because it was so hot. We were throwing ice and trying to lower the temperature of the pool. Eventually it got down a little bit, but the poor extras and dancers, every time we'd shoot a scene, they'd all have to jump out really quick just to cool off in the 110 degree temperatures because the pool was so hot.
Does background get a lobster bump for going in that water?
That was also to bring up that scene. That was one of those scenes that the singer was pre-recorded. We had that, and then when he showed up and did the first rehearsal, we all kind of looked at each other and said, "Let's just let him do it live," because he was really goofy. If you watch it, he's really a funny performance, and it's like, let's just have him do it live because that'll be better. And so those are one of those moments where you have the pre-record, but in the moment you go, "No, this is better live, so let's just do it live."
With his keytar, with Ryan's keytar, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Paul, any more stories from the pool scene?
So we were trying to he wanted the scene to start with a girl diving into the pool and coming out, and the camera was going to follow the girl diving into the pool, and then it comes out and it shows Emma talking to her friends on the other side of the pool. And so we were trying to cast an extra, basically, they didn't talk, who could do a nice dive in a pool and had an attractive figure and could wear a bikini and was the right age and everything else. And believe it or not, in Hollywood, it was a little harder to find than you might think, to find a pretty girl who could dive. So we ended up.
It's on everybody's resume, but nobody can actually do it. It's like.
But nobody can do it. Videos and videos and videos of, they were pretty, but they couldn't dive. They could dive, but they weren't pretty enough. I mean, it went on and on and on. And so I have a friend who is on a swim team, and I happened to mention it to him, and he goes, "Oh, I have a friend who could do that." So I had her send in a video. So she ended up being the one. She got picked, and a real pretty girl, and she had a beautiful dive, and she was a really good swimmer and everything. They put a bikini on her, and luckily the camera was from behind, because every time she dove in, the bikini top would fall off. And so when she got off on the other side, she would always have to pull up her bikini top before she got, because the scene, she dives in and then she gets out of the water and then she goes off and then the camera follows Emma at that point. They tried everything they could to try and get that poor top to stay on her. And every single take, she would jump out the other end and quickly have to fix her bathing suit.
You guys are still friends. I hope even despite that.
Well, it was a friend of a friend, so I actually haven't seen her since, but I hope she still had fun. She made the movie. She made the final cut.
What other scenes strike you guys as particularly memorable from this shooting experience?
The scene that I love, of course, in the movie, and was an amazing scene to film, was the dancing at the Griffith Park on the road up there. I forget the name of the song.
Duet dance.
Yeah, the duet with Emma and Ryan after they leave that party there. And it was one of those that they wanted, magic hour shot. So we actually shot it over the course of 2 nights. We went up there. I think we made a company move up there one night so we could do it. And then we came back another day. Or maybe the first day was just a rehearsal. I'm not sure.
Lots of rehearsal. I think there were 2 rehearsal days, if not more, because the slope of the hill made them want to rehearse on site. Mm-hmm. It wasn't enough to just rehearse in a studio.
And then it's a huge crane shot. It's a huge single crane shot that takes you through most of the dance number and all at just the right time again and all. So while it wasn't a huge deal with extras or anything, it was the timing. And of course, I love the scene, and it's a beautiful sunset. And then it's that huge crane number. We had an amazing crane team that could handle all those oneers that just followed them through the whole scene, just like they did at the beginning on at the freeway as well. So those big crane shots were huge in Damien's, ideas, and they all came off, I think, really well in the final cut.
Another magic hour shot that had to happen at the perfect moment, and mm-hmm. It's all there. It's all there in the film.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of people think that that's a backdrop. I've had people say that to me, that it's that has to have been done on a stage or with a backdrop or anything. But that's
it's so much of an homage to those type of scenes that you just assume it was recreated on a stage, just like the old movies were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That reminds me of another one, though, to ask about, and that's the Griffith Observatory, where they are shooting at Griffith Observatory, but then you have the wire work air dancing. That must have been on a stage somewhere.
The wire work was on stage, yeah, but the walking through the observatory part of it was. We couldn't film in the planetarium itself anyway, but we didn't want to because of the way the scene was.
And did that
was another magic hour shot out front, wasn't it?
Yes. the car pulling up, yeah.
Yes, to match Rebel Without a Cause, yeah.
And so did you do the wire work on the same stage days that you were doing the What If montage that is supposed to be stage work? Was that connected with that, or did you have a separate day of doing that sort of pickup work? In other words, when you were on stage shooting the big What If montage where they're going from stage set to stage set, it's part of that, the work you're there for a couple of days, you pick that up as well.
See, you're thinking like an AD there. That is correct. That was Hollywood Center Studios also. That was the same time, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that was all on stage at Hollywood Center.
And Hollywood Center worked out nice too because of the shot of them walking past the big elephant doors and able to get some exterior shots there too. Didn't just work well because it was one of the few stages available that would fit what we needed, but it ended up making for a nice couple shots there too.
So all of these challenges, how did the cast take to this?
Emma and Ryan were great. No complaints there for sure. I mean, I usually start maybe as a second AD somewhere 4 to 6 weeks before we start shooting. And they had already started well before that with their rehearsing and the dancing and all. We had offices across the street from the dance rehearsal stage. They were well into their rehearsals before I even started. And so they wanted to rehearse. They wanted to get it right. They wanted to make sure that it was made them look good and made Damien look good and everything else. I know Steve can probably attest to this too, where Ryan, took piano lessons so that he could actually play the piano. And they put a lot of work into it. And yet, from our perspective, they were great to work with, just really on board, very professional.
Yeah, anytime Ryan played that piano, and there's close-ups of fingers, those were all him playing. I mean, that's a lot of the time you'll hire a hand double that can play the piano to really get the tight shots, but those were all him playing and him just. I don't think, from what I remember, he knew how to play the piano before the film, so he had learned for a year or 6 months just to be able to play those tunes, and those are really difficult piano riffs to play and to make look like second nature. So I think that they were as dedicated as Damien was to making the movie the best they could.
And as I recall, I think we took a while to find a hand double that could play the piano. And as I recall, we had one, and I think we dressed him and brought him with us time and time again, and he never worked, I think.
Yeah. Every day he was there, but he
was
just
there
never,
and he never
just
worked.
in case.
Yeah.
Wow.
But that's the same thing. You're only as good as your worst backup. So if Ryan couldn't hit it, and then they were like, well, what are we going to do now? Then you're stuck. So I think it's the same reason why you pre-record everything, just in case they can't sing it live. But in the movie, Emma almost sings everything live in the movie, except for that Griffith Park dance number. But everything, at the party, even in the roommate song, all of her parts are live, whereas the rest of the roommates are playback.
Oh, and when she's in the bathroom. Too,
yeah, right? In the bathroom at the party.
Right.
And,
yeah.
Her audition. I mean, even their duet in their apartment where they're together playing at the piano, that was live, Ryan and her singing. And so, that you always have the best backup you can, like a hand double or music. But if you can get it, with them doing it at that moment, in that vibe, then you're golden.
Now, we talked about Ryan learning to play the piano, but there's actually a lot of musicians in the movie, I'm assuming, playing the parts of most of the other musicians. Is that were they all musicians, or were there other folks that had challenges as well?
We had to hire sideline musicians to handle all the instruments that you have in the movie. So like there were bands and bands and bands, as I recall. Wow, now that you remind me, I had a lot to do with all that. Yeah. We were working with extras casting, and also the music department had a music contractor that we were dealing with to try and find the right look that Damien was looking for and the ability to play the instrument. Even though they weren't necessarily playing the instrument on the set, they had to look like they were. And then because of the unions, they had to be part of the musicians union. They couldn't just be an extra who looked like they were playing the instrument. So that took a lot of casting and trying to find all those different people, because there were quite a few different bands throughout the movie that had very specific looks. The jazz club, the band in the truck on the freeway, the 80s band. I can't even remember.
The John Legend. Yeah, John Legend's band.
Oh, yeah, John Legend's band. There were a lot of bands. And so little by little, as the dates came up that we were going to be filming them, we were getting closer and closer of showing pictures to Damien. What about him? What about him? And he would give you ideas of who he wanted and what types he wanted. But then it was hard to find musicians that were available, that played the instrument that you wanted them to play, that had the look you wanted and everything. So that was quite a challenge, actually.
Steve, any particularly challenging that you want to riff on there?
When we recorded the band that John Legend was in that made, Ryan money and famous and all that band, we tried to record everything live on that day when they did the big concert scene, just to have as much live emotional, connection with the audience, because it's always better if you can. It's always better to get it live, and also just to have, options in post-production to be able to use, something that might happen naturally on set versus something that happened in a recording studio a few months earlier. And so, that was one of those days where you got to have a mini John Legend concert because he sang, live a couple takes. And that was just one of those more fun days on set where, instead of just being involved in just hitting a playback button and playing it through speakers and having people lip sync, you get to just really be part of that experience. And I think that was a fun day for everybody on set. You're at a concert, really at a John Legend concert with maybe 200 other people. So I think those are the fun days on set, making movies and doing those things that not a lot of people get to experience that are pretty unique.
And as I recall, we would record a few takes at the beginning live, right? And then you would use one of those for playback as we got into the coverage for the different
right, exactly. Yeah, you didn't want to wear everybody out. So, like I said earlier, you only had a couple takes. That's why generally concerts are only a couple hours long. And then you use those takes and you use that for playback the rest of the day so that everything would match later on in editing. But yeah, and that gave the realism to those moments.
Rofa, what venue did you use for the concert?
John Legend and the Messengers. That was at the El Rey on Wilshire.
The Messengers. Great memory.
The Messengers, yes. That was a parking nightmare. Where do you park near the El Rey with that many extras? These are the things that we deal with, yes.
Yeah, and I remember, I was going to say, I remember on the El Rey, we had the weekend, we loaded in on the weekend and set up and rehearsed it a couple times. And so that was probably one of those unforeseen location things like, hey, we all want to get in there early. And
exactly. And we've only bought them out for so long. And it's a challenging spot there, Mid-Wilshire, for parking and things like that. But it's a great venue. I love it. I love going to the El Rey. I just think it's you just walk in, it's right there. It's not too big, not too small. I love venues like that.
And we had a couple scenes there, didn't we? We had scenes outside and isn't that where we also did the little green room area and all?
Oh no, that was Fay Dodo on Adams.
Oh, that's right.
That doubled. There were a couple different things in the movie where it's not the same exterior as interior club-wise. The Black Box Theater where Emma does her audition or her one-woman show is at the Hayworth Theater on Wilshire, a little closer to downtown. But the exterior didn't seem quite right, so we did that outside of Fay Dodo on Adams, which ended up working out well for being able to do a couple other little concert-y type things there because it's a club. And Ryan's club at the end of the movie is the interior of Sebastian's club is the Blind Donkey in Long Beach, but the exterior is a club called Black on Santa Monica Boulevard in Hollywood. So both of those ended up being different interiors and exteriors. For all you where'd they shoot this movie? There you go. It's not the same place at both of those locations.
We were all over the place.
We were all over the place. And since we were all over the place in every part of town, you end up coming up with other ways to, pair things and this and that. So, things like that happen.
The other one, what's the place downtown where they sit and they have not farmer's market, but
Grand Central Market.
Grand Central Market.
Grand Central Market, the oneer, yes, the oneer of them having pupusas at Grand Central Market, which that's always rewarding as a location person when, you have to pay them to shoot there, but then you say, this will be good for your business, it'll be a big movie and people will come. And in that case, it really worked. I've ran into the family there a couple times and they have a little picture on the wall it's a oneer. It's a one shot on the movie, beautiful shot, but it's just clearly their place. It's right in the middle of Grand Central Market.
And it was open. It wasn't our people.
And it was there are people still all over the place. Oh yeah, it cost money just to shoot in the center of Grand Central Market, even though I wasn't closing them down, and we were only in there for 2 or 3 hours. But it's nice. It's nice when you can actually say that to somebody that, hey, it'll be great. The movie will be a hit, and people want to come and eat where Ryan and Emma sat, and to have it actually pay off in a movie that was a huge hit, and it really has helped because they're a great family and they have great business there now.
Well, let me ask, when you guys were doing the movie, could you tell at the time that it was going to be a big hit? Were things just coming together on set in a way that you felt like it was going to be what it ended up being?
I felt it was from seeing. Sorry, I just felt it was from watching Whiplash. I knew we were in great hands. I said this. If he can pull off Whiplash the way he pulled it off, then I'm in. This is great. Yeah, if he hadn't done something like that prior, who knows?
Yeah, I think when you get the opportunity to work on an original concept, an original musical, because most musicals are remakes or Broadway already. I think that's just always exciting to do something that is unique and original. And there was never that moment where you thought, I don't think he knows what he's doing. It's amazing how well it did, but it's amazing how well any movie does that you work on, and you're always just so happy that people enjoy the work that you do, because we all do films and shows that nobody could care less about, which is okay. But when you have one like this where it resonates with everybody and it makes everybody happy to watch this movie, I think that's a reward in it. But making the movie was just a blast, for me at least, for the whole time, and that's what that movie was. So I think when we were making it, it felt like this was something special. But the amount that it resonated with people, the amount that people recreated it, and in Japan or in Korea, you've seen these videos where they just recreate the dance numbers. It's amazing, So those are things I don't think you expect that would happen. And then when they did happen, it was just really thrilling to watch.
I remember at the end of the day on the freeway, they video played back the dance number for the whole crew, and everyone stood around. Of course, this was into the middle of filming, I guess, but the whole crew stood around and watched, and Damien wanted to play it for everybody. And I think everyone just was pretty amazed and shocked and happy, and there was hooting and hollering and everything else at the end of the day. As the sun was going down, it was too late to shoot anymore, and we were done. That was pretty exciting, I think, for everyone to see the results of all that work, and everyone really enjoyed it. That was a fun moment.
Steve, you talked about how the film resonated with folks, and it brought up a point for me, the film is about an actor and a musician, and as we know, that's above the line talent, if you will. But the film also resonated with me as crew. Personally, some of that bittersweet trying to work in Hollywood, or what works or doesn't work, and how things come together. I'm curious if it resonated for any of you on that level, having actually worked on the project.
Well, I think any story where the main characters follow their dream and just have a passion for what they do for a living, I think always resonates with people that have the same passion and the same, working in the film business isn't easy. It's not a quick buck. It's something that, you have to have a passion for, because it is so difficult to do, but it is also so rewarding if you have that passion. When you watch characters that have flaws and have, ambitions and it feels a little bit more real, it's always something that, it kind of bounces off of you, feeling like you're with them and you understand what they're going through. I think for me personally, to watch these two characters that are really going after their dreams, always reminds me of when I first started. It wasn't easy. You didn't get big movies or big shows at the beginning. You're working for free. You're doing whatever you can to move ahead and to try to pursue your dream. And that's what these people were doing. And I think on that level, it resonates, I think, with anybody who really goes for what they're trying to do in life, no matter what it is.
I was born and raised here in LA, but I have a lot of friends who've moved out here. And so the whole element of like Emma moving out to LA, trying it out, it's not going to work. She ends up moving back home. I mean, I think that resonates with a lot of people in the film business, because there's so many people. I'm a rarity. I think that I was born and raised here, but so many people move out here in chasing that dream. So I think that definitely resonated with a lot of people.
The movie, I think, is always going to work on many levels, and that's definitely one of them. Watching it again fairly recently, just essentially after Emma wins Best Actress, it makes you kind of want to watch it again and go, oh, kind of what was it throughout the movie that helped get her Best Actress? And the audition scene is so powerful, and to know that she did that live, and she just so pulls off the emotion in that. But just little moments that I still get choked up when I watch it. When she's outside the club after her one-woman show fails, the way she just plays that with Ryan, and how she gets choked up at one point, that it just gets me every time. It's not because I worked on the movie, it's because and those moments resonate so well for that theme, and they're throughout the movie. And no offense to Miles Teller and Emma Watson, but the movie wouldn't have been as good with them. I'll just say that right now on record, because that's who was going to be in this movie during a lot of my prep on this movie. It was going to be Miles Teller and Emma Watson. And I thought, okay, that's fine. They'll be good. Damien's worked with Miles, and he plays an instrument, and they'll be fine. And Emma Watson's fine. But then the minute it became Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling, I had even more high hopes for the movie.
Well, it's interesting what you're talking about, Rofo, and I'm surprised you didn't take credit for the location of that scene is really perfect. I don't know how she could have got the Oscar if she'd had to do it in worse locations around town. So certainly all of you contributed to how well the movie did in your little bits. But I do find when I watch a movie that I've worked on, oftentimes I am distracted by everything I knew was going around when we were filming that scene, even if it is something powerful or like the scenes you're describing. Do you think this movie is actually different than your other experiences on that level, or is every film like that for you?
I mean, I think for me, I watched the movie as a viewer first versus a crew member. There are some movies where I definitely watch it as a crew member. There are a few movies in my career where I can watch it and go, holy crap, how did they pull that off? Oh, wait, I was there. Yeah. And I think this is one of them, So, it is nice when you can watch it as a piece of entertainment and as a piece of art versus just, here's where we were on this day and that day. But I think for most of the time, when a movie is solid and really works, I think you get to watch it as a viewer.
It's interesting because I think I watch it the other way around. I think when I first watch a movie, I watch it like, oh, I remember that day. Oh, I remember that day. Oh, I was hiding behind that tree. And that I watch it that way. And it almost takes me a second time to watch it when I can then sit back and go, okay, I can watch it for what it is and enjoy it that way. But it is hard to you put so much time into the prep and the shoot, and there's so much that goes into it. It's hard to separate yourself sometimes from all of that while you're watching it. But I find it's easier the more times I watch it. Now that I've seen this a few times, I can watch it. And I'm more removed from the day-to-day planning and scheduling and all of it. Then I can watch it and enjoy it for what it is a little more.
La La Land's especially rewarding upon viewing after having worked on a movie because it's all up there on the screen. There's nothing more depressing when you're watching a movie that you worked on and you think this scene is going to have some scope and that's the way it looked and that's the way why we picked it in the first place, and then it's not there. And so much of La La Land looked the way it needed to look and should have looked based on where we were at. I mean, just scene after scene after scene. This is how this place should have been shot. Yes, they did it that way.
Oh yeah, the locations are iconic in this movie. I mean, the movie is a love letter to Los Angeles, and Robert was able to pull off all these incredible locations with, at least from my point of view, with ease. We don't know what he goes through. He may not have slept for 3 months straight, but
but yes, the directive was to show all the locations off, so maybe it's not such a surprise that it is all up there. But I won't name other movies that I worked on where I'm like, why did they shoot that scene that way? Why did we dress that entire location and all you do is see their faces? And La La Land is just so beautiful with its establishings and its wides and its camera moves
giving Linus credit.
Its lighting. Oh my God, Linus obviously deserved.
Yeah,
Linus deserved the Oscar for that, no question.
The colors and the crane shots and the moves and it was just everything. I think he did an amazing job with it. And again, I think that Damien was able to convey his vision to Linus, and Linus was able to share that and put it on film. Yeah. On film. We actually shot it on film.
On film, yes.
As opposed to all the digital stuff. But Robert, one thing that you, I'm sure, deal with a lot that we deal with that's different on this movie is when you're shooting in LA, you're either looking for palm trees to put in the shot or trying to find places that don't have palm trees to be in the shot, depending on where you're shooting. In this particular movie, we were always looking for palm trees, right?
Yes, looking for palm trees and places to put the iconic light posts that that ended up being placed in different shots. I mean, this is a good time to give a shout out to David and Sandy Wasco, the designers who also won. And I've been friends with them forever, did all the Tarantino movies and Wes Anderson, and so thrilled that they won the Oscar for this. But what a great scouting process it was with Damien, just narrowing down things that he wanted. Just not enough time in the day to shoot every location that we thought of, but the montage days that we ended with, there was a list of 15 places that we would have loved to have gone for the love montage. It ended up being 5 or 6, I guess, 6 or 7. But just to be tossing out these different ideas for these places that I grew up in and would love to finally film, and we ended up filming a lot of them. It was such a treat.
Well, it's been a treat talking about this movie. I think I'm going to go watch it again now, and I bet a lot of our listeners will do the same. Thanks, guys, for taking time today. It's really a pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Robert.
That's a wrap on La La Land, and that's a wrap on Season 2 of Below the Line. The coordination for Season 3 is already underway. And if you've got feedback, you can send email to skid, S-K-I-D, at belowtheline.biz. That's B-I-Z. I also appreciate your feedback via iTunes, where I review your ratings and comments, and Facebook, where I also post behind-the-scenes photos at Podcast Below the Line. And finally, you can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram. Both of those use Pod Below the Line. Thanks to Curtis Five for our music and John Wan for our logo. The logo is available on t-shirts, mugs, and stickers at redbubble.com. Just search for Below the Line. The show is a lot of fun to put together, and I hope you've enjoyed listening. Join us again for Season 3.